Welcome to another episode of the Indiana Bond Bank Bondcast. My name is Mark Wollner. I have the honor of serving as the Executive Director of the Indiana Bond Bank. And we have a very special episode for you this month. For Women's History Month, we have three powerful, strong women that I've worked with and look up to. And we are so excited they've chosen the Indiana Bond Bank Bondcast to come on and tell some of their stories about how they've reached their successes that they have, and also provide some advice for those of you looking to carve out a path. Maybe it's in public sector, or maybe it's just through your own career field. You couldn't learn from three better women. And so I am so pleased to introduce on your screen and on the audio. We'll start with Lieutenant Governor Suzanne Crouch. Lieutenant Governor Crouch, thank you for joining us today.
Sure.
Just very, very brief history, and I think she'll hopefully get into more of this. Has served in multiple elected capacities, obviously not Lieutenant Governor, but has served as our state auditor, served as a House of Representatives representative for the state, and served as a county auditor as well. And so can't wait to hear more about that journey. We also have Treasurer Mitchell. You often know her or hear her on this podcast on my side of the table, getting to do the interviewing. We flipped the table on her today and have asked her to share some of her amazing story, how she arrived as state treasurer, former Cass County commissioner, and some of you may not know, actually started the Trust Indiana program, was our really first director of launching that local government investment savings program that the state now offers. So again, so grateful to have the treasurer and her to be willing to share her story. And also, thank you, Treasurer. Chetrice Mosley-Romero, who I think many of you also know from our cybersecurity podcast series. Chetrice, again, has been willing to also jump on the other side and share her story of a journey through state government that's included stops at the Utilities Regulatory Commission, Department of Revenue. I think she's done some work at Department of Labor as well on a joint program. And then I believe, Chetrice, and we hope to hear more, that you also got your start in state government as a governor's summer intern. And so just three amazing women, three unique paths. My job is to facilitate the conversation and then step out of the way. So thank you, ladies. And if I may, maybe Governor, I'll start with you. If maybe share what your first step, or who gave you that first nudge to kind of get onto this path of public service.
You know, it's interesting because I didn't grow up in a political home. My parents always voted, but I don't recall political discussions growing up. And so as a result, I was an independent voter starting out in my life, and I would go into the polling places, I remember very well, and I would just vote for all the women, and it didn't matter what party. And then I'd go back and look at the men's names and try to figure out how to vote. And I've never forgotten that, because that, you know, that's the way some independents vote. It wasn't until, I think, when Ronald Reagan was president, and, you know, he was such a clear voice in defining the essence of America, and he really inspired young idealistic conservatives and gave us great purpose and passion. And I remember particularly that Ronald Reagan always reminded us we must never rest in the fight to protect life and liberty. And he said that freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. And we didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. It must be fought for and protected and handed on for them to do the same. And I think it was Ronald Reagan and those words that really inspired me to get involved in politics. And I remember I just talked to my husband one night, being an independent, and I said, you know, I'd really like to get involved in government and in politics. And he was a staunch Republican from Southern Illinois. And so that is the direction kind of my life took, and just started by volunteering. And it wasn't until later that I ran for office. But so that was kind of how I got involved. Just being inspired by a leader and a cause, and then just reaching out to someone that provided some direction to me.
And what was that first race that you ran in, Lieutenant Governor?
Well, I ran and actually was a county commissioner, and that's what Secretary Mitchell and I share in common, is that local government experience and now state experience. Back in 1986, I ran for county auditor down in Vanderbilt County because I thought if you were the best candidate and you worked the hardest, you would win. And I lost. And and it was personally a very devastating experience. But you know what? You learn more from your losses than you do your wins. And I stayed involved and then ran for that office again and won. And but it was really a great experience, just campaigning and and running. And in hindsight, I can even say losing wasn't that bad of an experience. Now that I've got a few years behind me.
Treasurer, I'd love to turn to you. Who or what was your first kind of nudge toward the path that you're on now?
Yeah, well, like the Lieutenant Governor, I did not grow up in a family where politics was discussed, but I think my story really lends itself to the importance of having mentors in your life and people who see your possibilities and put you in places where you can realize your potential, and the importance of us doing that for others as well. My Sunday school teacher, actually, back in Illinois where I grew up, said that I should become a state Senate page in Illinois. I had no idea what that was, but I went and did it, and it was a 2-week program there, and really got to learn something about government and kind of got the bug. I also in college interned for Senator John McCain and answered his phones for a semester, 20 hours a week. And I learned so much. And I quote the Lieutenant Governor on this all the time about what it means to be a responsible and a responsive public servant. I think that's such a great quote that she uses. I give you credit, I promise. But I really learned that from answering his phones about how much it meant to be a public servant. And those experiences just kind of build on each other. If I hadn't had the state Senate experience on my as a page on my resume, I may not have gotten the internship with John McCain. If I hadn't had the internship with John McCain to put on my resume, I may not have been able to say I had enough of a political education to, or experience to run for county commissioner when I did. And even that was someone who knew my background, knew my interest, and said, you should do this. And I studied what a county commissioner did, and I ran. And I'll just say, and I know we're going to get to this question, Mark, and in some of it, but I was the first woman to even run for that office. And this was in 1996 in Cass County, and of course, the first woman to win. And it's just been my mentors all the way that have given me those nudges and the support, and have seen something in me that perhaps I didn't even realize was there.
Wow. And do you have a sense, so first to run, first to win, how many have come after you in those roles by any chance, Treasurer?
As far as a woman running, I left office in 2004, and it was not until last year that a woman ran again for a county commissioner in Cass County and won. So quite the gap, which is why I talk a lot about mentorship and helping other women, encouraging them to take chances and get out there. At 29, I had a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old, and it was the best job ever. And I got to take my kids to all kinds of things they never would have been able to go to and see and be involved in the community. And so I just encourage any woman out there who's interested in public service, not to wait, but to go for it. Call me. I'll talk you through.
I'm inspired already. Chetrice, I'd love to hear your journey. You don't have elected official or elected office yet, but certainly have taken a path through state government to some amazing leadership roles, and just watching you serve as the program director for cybersecurity for the state really is inspirational. I would imagine, don't know that there's not many like you around the country, but would you share what drew you to state government when you've got the talents to go succeed in the private sector or who knows where else?
Yeah, so it's actually goes back to teachers. So I had a professor, his name was Bob Dittmer at IUPUI. I was finishing out my degree, and I was finishing I was kind of coming to the realization I really needed to pick a minor to go with my big communications degree. because it turns out with big communications degrees, just the communications degree, there might be a good chance around that time that I was still going to be like a server at a restaurant. So I wanted to like put some emphasis to what I really wanted to hone in on. So I was actually deciding between business school. So I was doing a double degree business school or public relations or marketing. And I took this 101, like public relations 101, and the excitement that he had and the like big picture and the strategy, which is like my core of what I really truly enjoy doing, is understanding other people's points of view and seeking to understand and figuring out how does everybody win in a situation. It just drew me. You know, the marketing was interesting, but it would all be very number focused, you know, in a lot of ways. And you know, business is also still kind of generic. I really wanted something where I was really going to connect with people. And so yeah, his class was the one that like led me to doing getting a degree in PR, and then going from there to, like you said, through his course curriculum, I got a governor's internship. And what really hooked me into government was during this governor's internship with the Department of Revenue. I was able to, I was actually put in charge of putting together, and I don't know if anybody remembers, I'm sure that our listeners probably definitely remember that good old property tax crisis that happened so long ago. And that's sad because I'm dating myself now, so I moved into that aspect of my career. But I was an intern, and I was given this opportunity to say, okay, well, there's a lot of resources put together with the public relations manager, my boss at that point, a kit to help people walk through this and understand it, because it's complex, and local governments are struggling with resources and so on. So I really felt for the people, and then I got it, like I saw like it being referenced in media, and I saw it referenced on local government sites, and I saw people using it, and the numbers go up, and I was just like, oh my gosh, like you can really help people, you can really make change, you can really, as simple as a guide seems, it isn't when you're in the thick of a mess and you're trying to understand something complex and so on. So I was hooked at that point. It's been very difficult to consider a lot of private sector, because it's that ability, I think, to be of service to government and serve a way larger purpose than just one company is I think just an element of government service that is hard to walk away from. So here I am, being in PR, telling myself I'll just do this for a couple of years in government. And 12 years later, I've only continued to move up in the responsibilities, but the fact that I was able to do that from the get-go and be able to make a big difference, and been able to offer that to my own interns, like and being a boss to my own employees, saying, hey, yeah, we don't get paid the greatest, and yeah, there's other things that definitely can pay better, but the difference you can make in 1 month of work here is going to be sometimes more than you can do in years at a private sector job. And I think there's a certain power to that. So got bit by the government bug.
And we're glad.
Governor, maybe back to you. We talked about the beginning of your career and those first runs. I want to touch on maybe that. What do you attribute your continued success to? Because there's some tenacity and grit. I think it's probably fair to say in every role you've held really since then, largely dominated by men. I'm probably not making any groundbreaking statements here. So I think it's easy for folks to start and then they see you there, and it's just that huge gap of, gosh, getting to where you're at now from where you started. Can you fill in kind of what that path looked like and what you did to persevere?
We do as Hoosiers, and I think I'm no different than any other Hoosier. We work hard, we put our nose to the grindstone, we do what's right. We don't expect pats on the back, and we just do that over and over and over again. And I think that it's that ability to take a job and do it the very best you can and work hard at it that ends up, having you being recognized. And I believe that in politics, so much is preparation and so much is timing, and while we can do the preparation part, each and every one of us, we can't control the timing. And so I guess I've been very blessed that the timing has been there for me for different positions that I never imagined that I would be called upon to do. And so, that is very humbling. And it also helps drive home to me the fact that I don't control a whole lot in this life. I think I do. I get caught up with everything that I want to control because I'm a little bit of a control freak. But at the end of the day, we control so very little. So
wait, we don't control things?
Maybe
oh, no.
Teresa, I don't.
No, I don't. That makes more sense.
Yeah, but at the end of the day, I had to accept that, I have to accept life on life's terms, not on Suzanne's terms.
Yeah.
And so when I can do that, it's very liberating, and it allows you to focus on the job that you're in and that you're doing. And I've just been blessed that the timing has been there that has allowed me to serve in a number of different positions. But so much of it is timing in politics. It truly is. I wish it was different.
Thank you, Governor. Treasurer, do you have anything to add? I mean, sitting in a treasurer's office, a lot of the banking, the finance, very old white male dominated. I can feel free to say that. And how have you had to establish credibility or done maybe more than male counterparts? And what's that path to success looked like for you in this role?
Well, so I'm the 55th state treasurer of Indiana, but I'm the fourth woman. And so, to your point, Mark, yes, there have been a whole lot of men that in this position and not that many women. That said, I have to say that the first woman was elected in 1926. Well, she was appointed in because her husband passed away 1 year into his term. And then she went on and won 2 more terms in her own right, just a few years after women got the right to vote. So women like Grace Urbans just inspire the heck out of me. And then current day, we have, Suzanne Crouch, we have Connie Lawson, we have Tara Klutz, we have so many wonderful examples of women serving in public office. But I think, I'm sure there have been obstacles. I don't know that I've always been aware. When I ran for commissioner, no other person would run against the incumbent. And I didn't know that. I'd only been in the community a couple years. I thought they really wanted me to run when they came and asked me, but they really wanted to fill a spot on the ballot. But nobody thought the incumbent was beatable. And so what you don't know doesn't hurt you. No, it does sometimes. But if I didn't, I didn't know that no one expected me to win. And so that kind of changes how you look at things when you think anything is possible. And, while I wasn't raised in a political family, I was raised in a family that said, here's the world, go get it. And that's really been, my perspective. And it is the hard work that Suzanne mentioned. It is just doing the best job you can. Because if you're not doing the best job you can today, you're not going to get opportunities tomorrow. So you build on what you've learned. And again, I have just been so fortunate to have so much support, so many mentors, so many friends that have just been there with me all the way.
Thank you. Chetrice, I'd love to turn the same question to you because similar to finance, cybersecurity, and information technology, I think we know traditionally who fills that space. And so
yeah,
maybe share how you made the leap, and then just what have been barriers to success or things that you've really encountered on your way to that role.
Yeah, I mean, when looking back at my career, going between, revenue and labor and workforce development, utilities, definitely male dominated, cybersecurity technology, definitely male dominated, although getting better, I think, it's such a funny question in the sense of what do you do? in that role as a woman and figuring out those obstacles. Because I really have walked into a room and never thought when I walk into a room, I'm a woman in the room. I really always come into a room, and I think this kind of goes to what Suzanne and Kelly was talking about as far as you're prepared, you're doing the best that you can. You know, I feel like my career has been very successful and I have a good reputation, you know, inside government as well as outside government, because what I say I'm going to do, I do, you know, and I'm consistent and I'm successful and I show the measurement. And it isn't because like, hey, I think I did a good job. It's, hey, I did this by this time, by the measurement of this success, that has affected and assisted and helped this many people, right? So, you know, it's hard to argue what, you know, what gender I am, what color I am, whatever I am, what background I have, if I walk into the room and have every reason and right to be there as much as the next person that I'm sitting by, right, man or woman. I think the largest obstacle I come across, and interesting, you know, I think Kelly is absolutely right. Mentorship is such an important thing. And in my career, it's been actually very unique, I think, in the sense that I've actually, the best mentors of my career have actually been men. I actually, you know, at the beginning of my career, I had like my first two bosses in my career were awful bosses. Like they were just like, they were women who were basically the stereotype of being jealous and, you know, not wanting to help me like succeed. And then like, as soon as I kind of moved out of that, and at first I think a lot of women get into those situations and they think that is what it is. And not only do you have women who don't help each other out, not because they're women, because they have every reason to be there than they do, right? And if they want to try to do their best, then you can do your best. I think there's some element to that support. But I also, you know, have had like, you know, actually funny enough, years later, that professor wound up being one of my bosses. And I mean, he's been my mentor since the beginning, but, you know, I've had commissioners who have been men. And it was until later in my career, I actually had a commissioner that was a woman, and she was amazing. She was the chair at the Utility Regulatory Commission. You know, but it's just those different components and aspects of leadership. And I think at a certain level, you know, some women below that struggle with the idea that you can deserve that and work for that and earn it as equal, if not much more than men or other in other situations. But to really kind of get past the barrier of the thinking, I think is kind of I would actually think, even as a successful woman, the thinking and the barrier of I'm still a woman is kind of the struggle that I still kind of struggle with, because at this point I've well more proven myself, much like these two women have. And I think it's definitely a situation where, you know, you come with the plans, as Suzanne said, you come with be a mentor, and you come with the results. And I think as long as you do that, you're going to do well, I think. And if you have a good attitude about it and you have tough skin, then I think it works out. I think that's good for anybody, any Hoosier, any person, man or woman. But
I've heard mentorship mentioned a couple of times. Maybe see if I'm echoing here. I've heard mentorship mentioned a couple of times, and I'll throw this out without directing to anyone. Has your mentorship been just kind of taps on the shoulder, out of the blue, organic, or have you kind of gone out and sought mentors in specific roles as you've grown and developed throughout your career? And what advice would you give, that same path that you took, or would you suggest a different strategy to those who are starting their careers or looking to grow?
I think you're muted.
Oh, how did I mute myself? I think, well, my husband wishes he had that, you know, that option probably sometime.
So does mine.
But I think in my case, it's been both. I mean, I've had people that have sought me out and have mentored me. And then I also have sought out people and, you know, asked their advice or asked them to be someone that'll be helpful to me. So for me, it's been both. You know, it's just recognizing that person that has something to offer that maybe I'm missing. And, you know, by working with them, I'm going to gain and grow in the experience. So for me, it's both.
Yeah, I agree. I think the older I get, the more I realize the importance of mentors, and I continually try to seek out mentors, but I also work to find people that I can mentor and help as well. But yeah, sometimes it's been more of maybe a single conversation in a way that makes you kind of turn your perspective on something and has really shaped you. But to me, a mentor is someone who really walks alongside you. You know, my first mentor, my Sunday school teacher, is still someone I can pick up the phone and call and just run something past him and his wife. And they just remain really important in my life.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I think the important thing as a woman, especially, is that when you're seeking out mentorship, right? Are you seeking out somebody with a different point of view, like Kelly had said, because that's kind of the patience of understanding somebody else's point of view? Or are you seeking out somebody to just reflect back exactly what you're trying to say, right? So, you know, because there's that line, and I think sometimes women get kind of tied up in that, where you're talking to other women, you're saying, oh my gosh, and you're kind of going through an issue. But if you're talking through the issue and not really seeking a different perspective, then you're really not getting mentored. You're just getting, I mean, it just becomes a blank session, right? I mean, and I bleep my own self. See, I'm being good. But it does. And I think then people start seeing that as, well, that's just that person being, you know, that's where we start kind of getting into that mode, right? Of the gender differences and so on. You know, whenever I seek out mentorship, I'm seeking out, here's my problem. I know I'm not seeing something. What am I not seeing? Because you've seen it probably differently, which I think is another reason why I have, you know, now in my career a little further along, I have really good women mentors who are, you know, have gone through and gone through things that I know I've not gone through. And then I also seek men as mentors, right? I'm like, hey, I'm in this, you know, room full of men. Maybe I'm just not understanding something that is not personal to me. It's just a way of different thing. I mean, there's a reason why they say men are for Mars, women are for Venus. We do think differently sometimes, and that isn't necessarily a bad thing. I think that can be used for strength. You know, I think me being involved brings, you know, as a woman, brings in a different type of perspective that I definitely know men don't always see. And I've definitely been on the other side of things where, you know, a gentleman has said something, you know, and I'm like, oh my God, yeah, I totally didn't think of that, because I was totally thinking of it over here. And I think that's the inner workings and connections there, I think, is what makes things even more powerful and an advantage, not a disadvantage, to not have only one singular type of, you know, people in a room. Diversity, I think, drives innovation, drives outside the box thinking, drives encouragement, and even, I think, drives vulnerability, to a sense of when we're, you know, when we're putting ourselves out there at risk, you know, like, I think that's what's amazing about, like, I don't know if I have the vulnerability of being able to throw myself out there and say, count, you know, be able to put a number to how many people, like, supposedly, like, want me, you know, and I would see it as, that's how many people like me, and that's how many people don't like me. And, you know, I would see that totally as devastating. And the vulnerability that these two ladies have put out there is way more than I've ever been able to. So if I had something that was going somewhere, I would call these two ladies and be like, all right, so I'm going to throw myself out there. How is it going to feel when I lose? Because I'm going to lose somewhere. And how do I not take that personally, and how do I keep moving forward? And I think that's the kind of mentorship I would want from somebody who's gone through something that I haven't gone through. So I think it's important, if you're picking a mentor, pick somebody with a different perspective, not somebody who's stuck in the same thing that you're at.
Well, I'll have to then echo what the lieutenant governor said, and yeah, losses are hard, but you do learn from them, and I think you really can't take, whether you're in public office or not, you're like, I'm responsible for me and for getting my message across as clearly as I can. I'm not responsible necessarily for how it lands with someone else. And so someone else's reaction really isn't personal. It's where they're at and what they're thinking. And yeah, maybe that's a thick skin. I don't know, but yeah, running for office is doing something you're scared of every single day. I think calling total strangers and asking for support, and absolutely facing rejection all the time. And Suzanne probably would agree with that.
I do agree. you can't, we all have to accept, particularly those of us in public life, that we're never going to make everybody happy. I mean, it just is, it's just not reality. So when you can accept that it's not personal, it's just that different people have different viewpoints and not everybody's going to agree with you. And that's okay. When you can get to that point, then the politics isn't personal and it's easier to accept those losses or defeats that allow you actually to grow.
Absolutely. Yep.
I think it's encouraging for our listeners. I think I'm hearing you still will rely on mentors. I heard Treasurer say it. I mean, still, it's not just a one and done at the beginning, fresh out of college, help me get on the right track. That ladies are still kind of opening those vulnerabilities, as Chetrice said, being willing to say, gosh, I'm thinking about stepping out of my comfort zone over here, and what feedback. And that's a hard place to be. And I think the fact that you're still as successful as you are, engaging in mentors, opening yourself up to feedback is, I think, a really powerful takeaway from this podcast. Before we pivot into kind of some general advice, I'd like to ask, just looking back at your story, what are some things that have changed since you ran for office, got involved in state government? And what are some things that maybe have disappointingly remained the same or not changed as fast as you would have hoped back when you started your journey? And I'll open that up. Chetrice, if you'd like to start.
Oh, I get to start the hard question. No, I'm messing with you. I think technology, I mean, I wouldn't be the cyber director, good cyber director if I didn't bring that up, right? But I think what has changed most certainly has been how we are and how we engage each other socially, electronically. Like even to this podcast, we normally would be in a room talking through this, probably would be a panel at a, luncheon this month, right? Which I do plan to have lunch with you ladies again, but we'll get to their one eventually, right? But I think what social media has done, there's definitely disadvantages, but I think there's also advantages. And I think when it comes to like my role as cybersecurity and being cyber safe and everything like that, I think people's willingness to adapt. And I think, haven't we not, we've seen that completely this last year, right? People uncomfortably being vulnerable every day, being out there, vulnerable not only on a physical side, but also emotionally vulnerable, because now you've moved a whole bunch of things in your work life, merging into your personal life and everything. And we're strong. We're stronger for it at the end of it. We all got through it together. I will have to say, and I would be remiss to not say it, the way that the governor and Suzanne have addressed this as a state has been amazing, in my opinion. So you can't make everyone happy, Lieutenant Governor, but I've been very happy. I have 4 kids and a husband, and I work for the state. He works in healthcare. I have 2 high-risk kids, and I truly believe that the reason why we have not, as thankfully as a family, have gotten COVID is because we've listened to the advice that you guys have put out, and we're better protected by everything you have all done. These really hard decisions, again, putting yourself out there that you just had to do to do things the right way. So, but I would have to say that's been the positive side of the challenges that I've seen good things happen, right? I think the other side that has still been a bit disappointing, but something that I think we're getting through is, I'm a mother of 4, right? And being a mom, a working mom, is still really, really hard, even in this time where I think there may be a little bit more understanding, because maybe the dads are also home as much and they're also having to do as much and seeing all the work. I don't know what there's been a lot of stuff that's been happening and going on around that. And I think the understanding of the balance that even if dad doesn't bring the cupcakes to the classroom, it's like, he must have gotten busy with work. If mom doesn't bring the cupcakes to the classroom, even though she works 50 hours a week, it's still like, the mom forgot, and as much as we want to say we're getting better at that, I still feel that pressure as a woman, and that's, been like, I mean, I pull hard hours like these ladies do, and I have to sometimes, when traveling was happening, had to decide, okay, well, I'm going to have to miss this because this is important to help a lot of people too, and I think that that's probably an area that I wish was better, and I hope will be better for when my daughter is in my shoes. But I think that's going to take a little bit more inching, and I think a lot more women in leadership positions to show we can have it, but it is still hard as much, if not sometimes harder than what fathers go through. Not to say that dads don't go through similar things, but I do think society lets them off the hook a little bit more than they do with women. And I think that's something we could most certainly work on a little bit more.
Well, I think for me, what's changed, to echo what Chetrice has said, is that it's the electronic, with campaigns, it's all about social media. It's all about, connecting with people in that space. And so the traditional ways of campaigning and doing business have really changed in terms of elections. And I think what goes along with that is just the very divisive and very kind of confrontational tone that's out there in politics today, not so much perhaps in Indiana, but more at the federal level, is very, disturbing, quite honestly. So that's what to me, has changed over the years. What remains the same isn't necessarily good, and that is we need more women in government. We need more women to run and to get elected. And while we represent 51% of the voting population, in general assemblies all across the country, we're only 29%. And then in Indiana, we're 25%. Now, as Kelly said, the bright spot is 4 of our 6 statewide officers are female, and our Supreme Court Justice is a female, Loretta Rush. So, but we just need more women in those policy-making positions. And so I'm encouraged, but wish we had better representation in our policy-making positions.
I absolutely agree. I was going down the road of one answer, and then Chetrice's answer made me rethink what I was thinking. Because when I first ran in '96, it's so different than when I ran in 2014, and different even then in 2018. And really, social media is just huge in the changes. And they're not necessarily changing it where more women run for office. In fact, I'm part of a fellowship, a national one, and the women get together on calls now and again. And what is alarming, actually, is the rise of violence against women in politics. I know one mayor who actually of another city, another state, who had to move basically under cover of night and not disclose her address. I know another one who has to have a security detail, and so my fear is this tide that's changing, in great part egged on, I think, by social media, keeps women from wanting to get out there and run. And I have personally never felt that. I really, in Indiana, I feel that we haven't seen much of that at all. And I deeply appreciate that. But I do think as women, that's something to keep in mind as we're encouraging other women to get out there and do it, that there are resources, there are choices, there are things you can do that if you really believe in this and you're passionate about it, don't let this stop you, this current climate stop you, because we need you, we need your voices. Indiana is unusual in that so many of the statewide elected offices are female. It's really only about 25% nationwide of statewide electeds are female. So we are on the right path here in Indiana, and I think, make it, we're very welcoming to women in office, and very supportive as a whole, and I really do appreciate that. But I agree, Suzanne, we need more women to run, to even just consider. One of our past lieutenant governors, Sue Ellspermann, she always says women wait for 2 things. They wait to be asked to run, and they wait until they know the job, till they feel like they can absolutely do the job before they run. And so whenever I speak to women, I say, here's your ask. So cross that one off your list, and you are going to learn on the job every single day. So don't think you have to know it all now, and it's okay to fail and make mistakes on the job, and it really is. But we're very, we have very high expectations of ourselves, which I think is a great thing until it becomes an obstacle.
Yeah, well said, Kelly.
Yeah, very true. You know, there was a state representative when I was in the House, Charlie Brown. He was up near Gary, and he'd always say, you know what, whatever you do, always be at the table, because if you're not, you may be on the menu. And I never forgot that. And by golly, you know, I'm going to be at that table, you know, because I don't want to be on the menu.
I love that. I'm going to totally steal that.
I know.
That's awesome.
That's really very good.
Yeah, it's good.
Well, let's keep going on that track. We've told your stories. Now let's write the next chapter. So, Treasurer, certainly has shared we need more women. Governor, you've said, gosh, 51%, but only 25% in our state house. So, what advice would you give to those women aspiring or thinking about entering public life?
I think what we have to do, Kelly and I, what we have to do is we have to identify women in Chetrice, and we need to identify women and we need to ask them, because Kelly's absolutely right. Women don't see themselves in those positions. So we have to seek them out and ask them if they will step up and do that. And then we need to help them and mentor them. So I think it's more on us. And I may be wrong. What do you think, Kelly? I don't.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I would not have ever considered running for county commissioner if a mentor in the community hadn't come to me and said, look at your background, look at your abilities, you can do this. And in connecting, my experience in education was not something I did automatically. But once someone else pointed it out, I was like, oh yeah, treasurer was a little different because I'd worked in the office for 6 years and I knew what the treasurer did, but there I go again. I wait till I know the job before I run for it. And so I think that's a really good answer, is to constantly be looking and for women who might be interested in this and be really good at it. I have had some women seek me out and say, hey, look, in the future, I might want to run. Where did you start? What did you do? And we just start talking about first steps. Get connected with your local party, volunteer, get connected on campaigns, go to meetings. What do they talk about at a council meeting? Go and find out, just so many things that people can do to start, and we can just encourage them and maybe connect the dots.
Governor, thank you for your time. I know you have another pressing engagement behind this. Thank you for joining this episode of the podcast, and we are so grateful to have your advice for Indiana.
Oh, it's so good to be with my good friend Kelly Mitchell and Chetrice. I mean, to be with powerful women who are successful and have done it themselves always inspires me. And so
thank you.
Thank
you for
Wonderful
being
to see you.
Yeah, it's always good to see you on St. Patrick's Day.
That's right.
Yes.
Happy St. Patrick's Day.
I say go Irish, but I'm a Boilermaker, so. All right, take care. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Take care. Bye.
Treasurer and Chetrice, would you like to kind of wind us up here, and you have time for a few more questions?
I have a few minutes.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's great advice. And Chetrice, I don't know if you had a chance to tackle that last question. I want to open that up to you if you.
I think they hit it perfectly.
I guess what's something you wish you knew then that you know now, maybe didn't know back then as you were getting into your roles? Or maybe, as Treasurer said earlier, sometimes ignorance is bliss. And
Yeah,
go ahead, Chetrice.
Oh, I was gonna say, I think there is a component of I love what you said about, you weren't raised in politics, but you were raised in a you can do anything kind of environment. And I think that is kind of the attitude you have to have, despite despite your background stuff, I think if you have a passion for something, I think especially in government, but even if it's outside of government, if you know, if you think that there's no reason for you not to be a commissioner or a CEO or a COO or whatever the high level is, or even own your own business. I mean, I think there is a component of why not. I mean, I think there are so many tools out there now. There's so many people. There's so many ways of connecting that I think it's important to most certainly, you know, put yourself out there. And the worst thing, you know, I always go with the worst case scenario is what? That you fell and then you just start again. You'll still have your health. You'll still have people who love you around you. You know, I think they're the best and most successful people that we ever see anywhere are people who've done that exact same thing. And it's kind of like what my husband tells our kids: if you never ask, then the answer is always no. So at least when you ask, you at least have a 50-50 shot. And so you know, I think there's some power to that, you know, going into something, not always knowing everything is actually, you know, and what Suzanne said earlier, I mean, we can't control everything. So we're never going to go into a situation where we can control the outcome, most certainly everything in between it. So going and putting yourself out there and realizing that you're going to have people supporting you is I think pivotal into what you kind of walk into at the very beginning. And then also I think realizing from the very beginning, you don't control everything. Put yourself out there, and whatever you think your life is going to be when you graduate college or you go into your life is not going to be that way. So probably better accept it now, because no way. I mean, this role didn't even exist when I got out of college, and so I would not have been able to say when I grew up I want to be, you know, the first cyber program director fully dedicated in the state of Indiana that's a woman and one of just a few in the nation. I mean, who would put that on their, you know, to-dos? So move yourself towards where the need is, and before you know it, you might actually be in a position that was actually the first of it. And I think there's some amazing ingenuity to that. So
yeah. A couple things I just want to say, and maybe this has to wrap it up for me, but one is to the local government people that are listening. I would just encourage you to take advantage of the associations you're part of. Take advantage of getting to know your counterparts in other counties. You know what you're doing. You're not the only one doing it, and there are people there who can help you face challenges, whether they're old challenges or new challenges. But building that network of people is just so important, and taking advantage of the opportunities for education and connection that your associations allow is just really important. You know, I'm involved with our National Association of State Treasurers, and it has just enriched my experience as state treasurer, because I can call my counterpart in almost any other state and say, what are you guys doing now? And honestly, through the pandemic, through COVID, we had weekly calls for a while, and really helped each other face, you know, our different challenges that we were facing. And then the other little bit of advice or encouragement, I would say, I spoke to a group last week, and I led with my biggest regret in life. It gets attention when you lead with that. But what I said is it's not, when I look back at the opportunities and experiences that I have had, whether it was as an intern for John McCain, or, you know, as a county commissioner, or whatever amazing thing I've gotten to do, what I have, if I look back on it and regret anything, it's the moments where I didn't fully live in that moment, where I wasn't fully present, where I didn't get the most out of that experience, because we're all multitasking. We're all being mothers or parents. And, or, you know, when I was an intern, I was a student, I was working, and I was answering phones. And so maybe you don't actually see the incredible opportunities and the wealth of experience that's in front of you at the time. And if you can kind of get yourself present in the moment, you will get the most out of it, and you will make the deepest connections and have the best educational experiences. But for me, that's still something that I work at, of not thinking about what I just did or what comes next, but saying, right here, right now, I am talking to two really amazing people, and we are getting to talk to, hopefully communicate with people all over Indiana, and what a neat thing to do. And so I think just paying attention to the moment you're in and making the most out of it means we all do better. It enriches our experience and what we can give to each other.
I love that. That's great advice. I think in work and personal, it's most certainly good advice.
Absolutely. Being in the moment, that's just love, treasure having you, Chetrice, and Governor, who not on the end, just fantastic conversation. And so grateful you chose to share your stories and your advice here on the Bondcast. And I don't know if I've shared, but I think for 8 of my 10 years in state government, going on 11, I've had great women leaders, and Chetrice talked about mentors, but Treasurer Mitchell, Lieutenant Governor Crouch, Lieutenant Governor Ellspermann was hired by Sherry Syward at the Housing Community Development Authority, and they've each had such amazing influence. I would not be sitting in this seat right here for a number of reasons without each of their touches and directions throughout the year. And so Women's History Month, thank the women in your life, appreciate the women in your life, and let's continue to make Indiana more equitable, gender equality place to live. And so for the Indiana Bond Bank, again, thank you to our guests. This is Mark Wollner signing off and saying thanks for listening. As always, subscribe to our YouTube channel or wherever your favorite podcasts are hosted. Thank you and take care.
Thank you.
Thank you.